All right, here we see a complete collection of K390 Seki City backlocks from the Dragonfly up to the police. I don't have the bugs. They just don't really appeal to me. I can see where they'd be really practical for certain people. You know, you keep them on your keychain. You know, you have K390 there ready to do whatever you need. But my keychain is obscene enough as it is, and it's just what I carry in my pocket goes from this to this. So we're just going to start in descending order with the police here. The first thing that you'll hear anybody say with this when they review it is it's so huge. It's, you know, too much for me. It is big. Here's how I view this. I view this as being the ultimate expression of Spyderco's thumb ramp. When you have it in this grip here and you're kind of manipulating it as such, you know, that is 4 inches of slicey K390 that you have access to. That's just an extension of your thumb. You know, it's incredibly, this right here is just so positive and so easy to manipulate that I don't really think of this as being enormous and tough to handle, just so much as if I need a cardboard destroyer of worlds, this is probably what I'm going to go for. If I'm going to be outside, if I have a fishing trip that I'm going to be doing a lot of cutting, this is what I'm going to carry. You know, one of my big criteria for if something is usefully ergonomic is if you can manipulate it back and forth and kind of all these different ways, and it still kind of holds up and doesn't like tip over in your hand. This is the ultimate expression of that. This thing is comfortable here, comfortable here. You can move it basically however you need to. And that's what I really like about this and why I ordered Micarta for it immediately. The guy who I got this from, too, is one of the few Micarta makers offering this that actually has a backspacer, a Micarta backspacer, too. So I'm a guy who weighs 120 pounds soaking wet. After 15 minutes of carrying this, I kind of forget that it's in my pocket, you know? So it's really not quite as horrific as some people would have you think. All right, the stretch. This is probably my favorite model on the table just based on my personal taste and what I like. I'm a huge Mannix fan. I have 4 different Mannixes, including a Crucarta one, and it's just almost my favorite knife. And this is hugely reminiscent of it. As far as the ergonomics go, you know, that you get that same real heavy locked in, I can do anything with this. You're never going to get it away from me. It's got that same feel for anybody who's familiar with how a Mannix kind of feels in hand. You know, it's a little bit on the bigger side. It's probably, you know, it's just a tiny bit smaller than an Endura. So I was actually under the impression myself that these were smaller than they were. But so I was really pleasantly surprised when I pulled it out, and it was nearly identical to my Mannix. The one thing this does have, I think, over the Mannix in one regard is that it is a tiny bit slicier. So you can tell why this is a cult following knife, and you know why Sal designed it to be his own, because it's got like a lot of those little features just ergonomically that really appeal to certain people, and me being one of those people. It's great choked up, it's great thumb ramped, and it's great kind of choked back behind the clip here. So that is the old stretch. So let's talk about the trifecta of the, you know, Endura down to the Delica here. We're starting to get into like, what am I going to say about the Endura that hasn't already been said over the last 30 years? I think K390 is an amazing option for it. Between this and the police, these are the 2 cardboard killers, you know, in my collection here. If I know that I'm going to need to break down a bunch of cardboard, it's going to be one of these 2, because they'll go forever. And that is sort of their utility. Or if, you know, I'm out for a fishing trip that I know I'm going to need to do a lot of like cutting down of branches, or, you know, or tying off and cutting off of lures and cutting off of weeds, it's probably going to be one of these 2. K390 isn't quite as horrific as you might think when it comes to, you just keep it kind of dry and you're good. So the Endura, what are you going to say about it that hasn't already been said? We're going to skip over this for a second and talk to the Delica, because the Delica is kind of the same thing. The Delica, it's like, I come to the conclusion that the reason it became a legend is because it's everything you need and literally nothing that you don't. You know, you got about 3 inches of useful blade here. This little ricasso pivot area here, one thing that people don't really talk about generally. That makes actually like a pretty decent pseudo choil if you need to get up and kind of move like this, you know. But then when you're back, you're behind the clip, and again, you know, great ergonomics. The Delica really, I mean, it's probably the you know, most acclaimed model in Spyderco's. It's up there with the PM2, you know, as far as legendary models that Spyderco has put out. So what am I going to say that's going to convince somebody for or against the Delica? Not much. So the Endela is the standout of these, really, because it's newer and it's not. Its name would suggest that it's just a compromise in size, maybe between the Endura and the Delica. But when you look at it, sort of look at them all kind of laid out like this, it's not the same thing. The blade shape is a little bit different. You know, you have definitely more belly here. It feels like a little bit more substantial. You know, you could get a little bit more kind of going with it. This was the first one that I got. And it's the reason that I ultimately ended up with all these, because I loved it so much. And it was like, whoa, it's another sort of intermediate size where it's basically identical in size to the Shaman. So if you're a medium-sized knife guy, really what you're looking at is one of these. You know, either the Endela, Endura, or Stretch. You know, if you want something that's more Manix-like, you get the Stretch. The Stretch is like really difficult to argue with for people who are PM2 and Manix fans. But yeah, this was the first one that I got, and I mean, I took it out and just brought it over to the Diamond Stones, and within 10 minutes had it where it wouldn't even whittle a hair. It would just take it apart, and the thing would kind of just like disappear into the air. It's like, whoa, for a 10 V class steel, K390 is nothing to be scared of when it comes to sharpening. So the last one here, the Dragonfly is a major cult knife. It's a knife that you'll see people say, oh yeah, I hate that thing. Or you'll see people say, it's my favorite Spyderco. And that comes down to how comfortable you are like this, you know, because that right there, that's where you're going to be living with this knife. And it's probably, as far as manipulating it like this, I mean, lightning speed back and forth and everything in between. That's what this knife is. When this gets put into your pocket, it just disappears. It's non-existent in your pocket. It's a great fifth pocket knife. It's great if you want to carry something a little bit more slicey and small along with like a Shaman or something like that. But you're either going to love it when you get it or you're not going to. I just happen to be in the former category where I got one. I got the VG10 model however long ago. I loved it. Got this. Knew I was going to like it, so got this Micarta from Vodix, and here we are. So that's every model back to back. Like I was sort of saying before, if you're a medium-sized knife guy, probably the place to start off is with one of these. You know, Stretch, great for fans of the Manix or the PM2. Endela is a great kind of medium duty, bordering on heavy duty, you know, sort of option. You know, it's got some good stoutness to it. Delica and Endura, what are you going to say? They're both legends for a reason. You know, they're almost as good as you can get in the sort of like more economy knife territory. And as far as the police goes, don't be afraid of its size. It's not as bad as you think. Like I was saying, I carry it and don't really even think about it when I'm carrying it. But the purpose that this serves is it's a cardboard killer for me. And that is really all I have to say about these. They are phenomenal knives, one and all. All of them are recommendable. We're talking about like different grades of 1A, 1B, 1. They're all awesome, you know? So really, that's where it's at.